Okay, and now it's time to introduce our speaker for the day. And I'd like him to start coming up here. Trevor Fuller is one of our candidates. One of our candidates for U.S. Senate to beat Tom Tillis. Now, I said, well, one of our candidates, I saw the other one say that she was going to run, but I haven't seen her in person here yet. And if and when she shows, she'll be here too. But till then, you got the floor, brother.
All right, thank you. Good morning, Democrats. Good morning. Good morning, Democrats. Good morning. Yes, that's what we're going to need to make a difference this year and in 2020. We're going to need energy in rooms just like this because we're going to have to get our people out to vote. We got to get our people out to vote because when we get Democrats out to vote, we win. Period. Period. Well, I'm so glad to be here this morning. Thank you for having me. My name is Trevor Fuller, and I serve as a county commissioner in Mecklenburg County. I serve at large, so I represent all the more than 1 million people who live in Mecklenburg County. And I've done that for the last 7 years, and it's been my honor and privilege to do it. And you know, my story to get here is not likely. In other words, it's not likely from where I started that I would be standing before you today. You see, I was brought up in difficult circumstances in a single-parent household, me and 3 younger sisters. My mother was determined that each one of us would have an education because she knew then what we know now, that education is the path out of poverty. And so if we know that, then our actions in government, our actions in public policy ought to be in helping people get out of poverty. So, I serve a county, as I mentioned to you, of over 1 million people. And you wouldn't know it, despite the prosperity that a lot of people associate with Mecklenburg County, that we have some of the highest concentrations of poverty in Mecklenburg County than anywhere else in the state. You heard what I said? In Mecklenburg County, we have some of the highest concentrations of poverty throughout this whole state. How is that possible in a land of plenty? How is that possible in our nation? That children are suffering. Children who are homeless, coming to school, having spent the night in a car. How can that be so in our nation? And so what it means is that we together, we have got to decide that we are going to invest in our people. And there are a number of ways that we talk about that, and I'll talk about those in just a moment. So I want to say a few words, and then I want to answer some of your questions. So, I'm running for the United States Senate. And you've seen some of the stuff that's come out of the Senate recently, haven't you? You've seen some of this stuff that's come out of this administration of 45. I can't say his name. Just 45. That's all I can get.
Yes.
And we don't need people in office who are not willing to stand up for us. We don't need people in the U.S. Senate, like the current senator, who is unwilling to stand up for the people of North Carolina. We who elected him. So when you go out in public and tell the people of the nation that you are against the declaration of an emergency at our borders, and you do it publicly, and then when it comes time for you to take action, you say, nope, sorry, never mind. I'm going to go with my guy, 45. Well, if that's who you're going to be, we don't need you. We already have 45. We don't need 45 plus 1. So, but we are in a very dark time in our nation, a perilous time in our nation. And if we don't stand up now, when will we ever do it? When we have these assaults on our democracy, as you were mentioning, we're seeing now today things that we saw 50 years ago. Suppressing the vote, tax cuts for the wealthy while people suffer, health care that we all need. Health care is a right for all Americans. Do you agree with me about that?
Yes.
Why? Because if you don't have health care, you don't have anything. So, in this land of plenty, it cannot be an answer that we can't afford health care for everybody. That's not a legitimate answer.
Yes.
So, it means that we need to provide health care for all. Whether you want to call it Medicare for all or whatever you want to call the program, we need to make sure that every single American has affordable health care. When I am your senator, I am going to make sure that we provide that promise to all Americans, the right to health care. And how are we going to do it? Well, first of all, let's talk about it. So we've had a party on the other side who has said for 7 years that they had a plan. We don't want that Obamacare. We don't want that Affordable Care Act, even though pre-existing conditions covered, even though children, your kids who are up to age 26, covered, even though there are no lifetime limits on health coverage, they have no plan. You know why they have no plan? Because their interest is not our interest. Their interest is those who are the wealthy, those who are the powerful, the insurance companies, the drug companies. That's who their interest is. So it's no surprise that the plans that they offer are favoring those groups and not people. We need to get out as Democrats, as I mentioned to you before. We need to get out and we need to vote because who's in office matters. It matters. You see who's at the top in the presidency. Voting matters. And what matters also is when we don't vote. We remember in 2010, anybody remember 2010? Yes. We were so happy about electing President Obama, which was a great achievement, but we fell asleep in 2010. And what happened? We're still living with the results of it today. Still. So if we don't come out in 2020, when those lines are drawn again, then we're going to be in for another 10 years of what we have just experienced. So I'm not telling you to scare you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not. I'm telling you we got a job to do. And you know what? We're going to get this job done. We proved it in 2018, didn't we? We broke the supermajority in the North Carolina Assembly. You can applaud for that. That's a good thing. So while you're hearing about these terrible bills that they're passing right now, this abortion bill, have you heard about this thing coming up in the General Assembly where they're trying to criminalize doctors for performing abortions? They're trying to tell women what they can do with their own bodies. This is outrageous. But we've got to stand up. And now we have a governor who has a veto, who can now have that veto sustained because there isn't a supermajority anymore. They haven't gotten that. The Republicans, they haven't figured that out yet. Because if they had, they wouldn't be passing these crazy bills. But we'll see. We've got to stand up for our people. So, why should we care about who is representing us in the U.S. Senate? We should care because the people who wind up in these departments, the head of agriculture or of the EPA or any other agency you can think of, all of those people are confirmed by the U.S. Senate. And so each senator has a responsibility to make sure that the people who serve in these offices serve the people. we need to vote because we need a new president in 2020. Right? Now, we don't know yet who it'll be. We still got some sorting to do. A lot of sorting to do, actually. But we're going to do it, right? And we're going to come up with a candidate, and we're going to get behind that candidate, and we're going to take the White House in 2020, aren't we? The other thing we're going to do, you may have heard that control of the U.S. Senate is at stake in 2020. And let me tell you that that control comes right through North Carolina.
Yes.
This is one of the states that everyone in the country is going to be watching for flipping a seat from Republican to Democrat. And you know what? We can do this in North Carolina. We've done it before. We can do it. And so that's why I'm so energized about this race, because we have a chance to make a difference, not just in North Carolina, but in this country. Imagine Democratic control of the U.S. Senate. Imagine that. Supreme Court justices, right? Coming up. U.S. Senate confirmed Supreme Court justices. We just had a fight about a justice who's on the court who shouldn't be there. Should not be there. And if you don't have the right folks sitting in that room, that's what results. And so we've got to stand up. And guess what? The people of this state are looking for us, you and me in this room, because we're the ones who are engaged. We're the ones who are activists. We're the ones who pay attention. And people are watching our lead. And so when it comes to turning people out, we're the ones that are going to have to do it. So we're going to have to drag our mamas and our papas and our cousins and anybody off the street. We need to drag them into voting booths because we got to get people to vote. Because again, when Democrats vote, we win. So I don't want to take up a lot of time talking about the issues that I care about and that you care about. I want to hear your questions. But I want you to know that when I am your U.S. Senator, I'm going to be focusing on health care for all Americans. I'm going to be focusing on climate change, because climate change is real. We just had 2 hurricanes last year, didn't we? And we had flooding. Is anybody else concerned that one of our major cities in this state was cut off from the rest of us because of the flooding? We have to do something about it. And there was just a bill that was just voted down in the Senate by our current senator when it was for additional aid money for people who suffered from natural disasters like hurricanes. In other words, he voted against money that would have come to places like North Carolina for disaster relief. Why? Because they made it political. They included Puerto Rico and aid to Puerto Rico in the bill. And so that's why they refused it. Now, mind you, the current senator is in the majority. So there's really no reason why we can't have this aid. If you're in the majority, you've got the votes, but you can't deliver, we don't need you. Right? So we need to realize that climate change is real. And we need to educate our kids. In Mecklenburg County, I have led the effort to start a universal pre-K program so that every child from birth to age 5 will have a quality early childhood education, no matter your zip code, no matter where you're from, no matter your conditions. And we've just started that program this year, and guess what? We need to do it across the nation. We need to make sure that every child is covered. And don't tell me we can't afford it. Don't tell me we can't afford it, because you know why? We're already paying for it. We're paying for it when our kids in 3rd grade don't read on grade level. We're paying for it when our kids don't graduate high school on time. We're paying for it when we're paying for community college and remedial education for kids who didn't get it in the school system. We are paying for it already. So why not pay for it in the best way? pay for it when it matters most. The evidence is clear that every dollar we spend on early childhood education pays off throughout that child's life over and over again. And so these are the kinds of things that we need to be about as Democrats, that we are about as Democrats. And so I'm asking to be your U.S. Senator so that we can make these things reality for the people of North Carolina and for really the people of the nation. So thank you all so much for having me. I really appreciate it.